Isekai is the type of anime that you can't help but watch, especially if the fights are insanely animated. I mean, it could literally make or break the series itself. So let's take a look at the top 20 best animated Isekai fights. Number 20, Makoto vs. Sophia and Lancer. Let's start our list off with a fight focusing less on muscles and more on brain cells. Makoto is not like your average hero. He's called the sorcerer by his peers because of his clever mind and sharp skills. He may look nice, but he is a monster. In this face-off against Lancer and Sophia, it becomes clear that the fight will be more focused on skill differences than raw power when Lancer and Sophia's combined attacks fail to even budge Makoto. Sophia is an annoying opponent with very fast speed and raw power, while Lancer is a great dragon who's skillful in advanced magic. Even their combined efforts were useless against Makoto, who pulled up the skill issue card and turned the match around in an instant. Makoto's magic skills and the ability to improvise to any scenario puts him multiple steps ahead in this battle. I mean, this is not the most intense battle of the series, but it surely is one of the best animated ones. It was interesting to see two of the strongest characters in Tsukimichi get easily outplayed by our sorcerer. I mean, just look at that animation. It was crisp, especially for a pretty underrated anime. 19. Tanya vs. Anson, the saga of Tanya the Evil. We have one of the cutest and probably the craziest isekai protagonists there could be. Tanya Degurachev is a 12-year-old military leader. She is a cold-blooded killer and an expert on the battlefield, and her battle against Anson is just one of her best fights. The aerial battle that takes place is breathtaking, with Tanya outmaneuvering every single one of Anson's and his soldiers' attacks, all while effectively counterattacking them. It's like she was a fairy, one that could blast holes through your body with lots and lots of lead. The animation captures every action and maneuver perfectly, and it makes it feel like you are experiencing it firsthand. Nevertheless, Tanya manages to stab Anson and end a not-so-clean battle. But it is then revealed that Anson was possessed by Being X, and he latches onto Tanya, beginning to self-destruct. So what does she do next when she manages to get a chance to get away? She unloads an entire magazine on the man. '18. Haruhiro vs. Deathspot, Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash is one of those underrated isekai gems that you might have missed. The fights in this anime aren't over the top or packed with crazy, flashy moves like other isekai. Instead, they hit you right in the feels with raw, unfiltered emotions, and this scene is a perfect example. Haruhiro is stuck in the Siren Mine, going head-to-head with a terrifying monster called Deathspot. This thing just doesn't let up for even a second, pushing Haruhiro to his absolute breaking point. But just when it seems like there's no way out, he unlocks a special thief skill called Gleaming Light. It's this cool ability that shows him a glowing path that he can follow to take down his enemy. The animation here totally nails the desperate vibe of the fight. Every hit feels brutal and real. In the end, Haruhiro's quick thinking and reflexes save the day. Grimgar doesn't rely on flashy power-ups. Its fights are all about survival and the harsh realities of their world. This scene proves that sometimes it's not about raw strength, but the sheer will to keep going. '17. Log Horizon vs. the Raid Boss, Log Horizon.
で、ぶっちゃけ勝率は？白井さん？
五分と五分。
In Log Horizon, battles are never about brute strength or flashy power moves, they're all about strategy and teamwork, and nowhere is that clearer than in the fight against the raid boss. This fight is one of the most creative and beautifully animated fights in the series, as Shiroe's meticulous planning takes center stage. The team follows his directions flawlessly, using their MMO knowledge instead of just mindlessly swinging swords. Every member relies on the strengths of the others, covering all the roles needed to execute their strategy perfectly. This battle shows what a real-life MMO raid could look like, with every member playing their part, whether it's fighting on the front lines, healing, or providing support. The back-and-forth tension and the sheer tactical brilliance make this one of the standout fights of the series, proving that sometimes victory isn't about being the strongest, it's about having the right bros to back you up. 16. Lloyd vs. Guisarm. I was reincarnated as the 7th prince so I could take my time perfecting my magical ability.
よくわからんがもういい。なら。
Being the overpowered main character that he is, Lloyd doesn't usually have anyone who can keep up with him. But enter Guisarm, an archdemon from the netherworld who's here to possess some poor blight body and cause some chaos. Honestly, Lloyd probably saw this as Tuesday. Even after Guisarm pulls the whole "I'm taking over this body to make things harder for you" move, it doesn't change the fact that Lloyd still outsmarts him like it's a casual workout. Using a mix of magic, swordplay, insane speed, and a brain full of past life cheat codes, Lloyd manages to take him down.
だとしたら本体はどこに？俺ならどうする？上か？
The fight itself was a wild mix of experimental animations that screamed, "We're showing off now," and honestly it worked. Not every anime gets this creative with its fight scenes, but 7th Prince leans into it like a pro. What's even better is that this battle isn't just about Lloyd flexing his ridiculous strength. It's about strategy, quick thinking, and watching him grow as a character. Yes, even OP characters have room to grow. The stakes were sky high, the choreography was smooth, and Guisarm was definitely a tough opponent. But at the end of the day, Lloyd proved that brains and finesse can outdo brute force.
ガリレア！クロー！タニア！バビロン！レー！ 誰でもいいからこのガキを殺す！
15. Shin vs. Demonic Human, Wise Man's Grandchild. Shin Wolford is a magical genius so overpowered in his world to the point where you just feel sad thinking about his enemies. It is just unfair to even think about facing this guy. Like, look, a demonic human who's been corrupted by dark magic, which increases all his skills by 10-fold and makes him more dangerous, all while letting him keep his intellect. And then there's our protagonist, who just used his knowledge from the other world to increase his magic skills and become a broken character. Who do you think will win? To keep his friends safe, Shin throws out devastating attacks on this demonic human, having no regard for what happens to the surroundings. And then there's a moment where you start thinking, does this guy have any limit? Well, no, he does not. The animation makes this fight a breathtaking display of Shin showing off his magic powers, even while being so strong that he still fights his enemies through strategy, and after winning, he proves to us that he is not actually your average isekai protagonist. 14. Seiya vs. Demon Lord. Cautious hero, the hero is overpowered but overly cautious.
最終破壊術式バルハラゲート
We got the overly cautious hero Seiya, aka the guy who takes better safe than sorry to a whole new level. Sure, he's ridiculously overpowered, but his real claim to fame is how he plans for literally everything. In this fight, he goes up against the big bad Demon Lord, and honestly, you would think a Demon Lord would be scary, right? Well, not here. Thanks to Seiya's absurd level of preparation, the Demon Lord ends up looking more like a punchline than an actual threat. Instead of just charging in with his over-the-top skills, Seiya had planned for every single move the Demon Lord could make. Every single one. Demon Lords are supposed to be terrifying, but up against Seiya, this one might as well have been a practice dummy. Of course, Seiya still pulls off some insane moves, completely wrecks the Demon Lord, and saves the day. But not without a cost. His final attack takes a serious toll, and he risks his life to finish the job. This fight has got it all. Ridiculous strategy, intense action, and just enough emotion to make you forget for a second just how over-the-top Seiya's cautiousness really is.
よかった。今度は助けることができた。
13. The Four Cardinal Heroes versus the Pope, the rising of the Shield Hero. It's not every day you expect the Pope to be the bad guy, but hey, anime loves to surprise us, and that's exactly what happens in this epic showdown. The Four Cardinal Heroes team up to take on the Pope, but let's be real, it's less teamwork and more Naofumi and friends carrying everyone else. The other heroes are pretty much background characters in this fight, while the Pope is out here flexing with unlimited energy powered by his loyal followers. His attacks and defenses are so over the top that even all four heroes combined barely stand a chance, except for Naofumi, of course, who is basically the MVP of this battle. What makes this fight stand out even more is how it highlights each hero's growth, though let's be honest, it honestly mostly just shows how far ahead Naofumi is compared to everyone else. The animation in Season 1 really delivered, and this fight is proof of that. The emotional stakes are through the roof for Naofumi and his party, and when he turns on his cursed shield to land the final blow, it's a game changer. This wasn't just about raw strength, it was also about overcoming past differences, especially when the other heroes finally realized Naofumi's worth after seeing his shield in action. Moral of the story? Don't mess with Naofumi, and maybe don't trust anime popes. 12. Shadow versus Beatrice and Iris, the Eminence in Shadow. Once again, we've got Shadow, the guy who loves playing the I'm just a weak little mob character card while secretly being ridiculously OP. This time he's up against Iris and Beatrice, who mistakenly think he's the bad guy. To be fair, he's not exactly subtle with his whole dramatic flair. Now, these two aren't exactly lightweights, they're both insanely strong. But unfortunately for them, they're up against a guy who treats battles like his personal stage performance, and wow, does he put on a show. The fight is a jaw-dropping mix of incredible swordplay and over-the-top action, with Shadow making everything look like it's no big deal. It's honestly unfair how effortless he makes it all seem. You pretty much know from the start that he's gonna wipe the floor with them, but somehow it's still fun to watch him flex. The fast-paced choreography and the little bits of humor sprinkled in make the whole thing super entertaining. This is one of those fights where you cannot help but cheer for your main character, knowing that he's about to completely annihilate his opponent in the most dramatic way possible. Shadow might be a mob, but let's face it, he's the star of every scene he's in.
逃げる。誰がどこへ。
待て
11. Kirito versus Administrator, Sword Art Online Alicization. The underworld has had its fair share of intense battles, and Kirito going up against the Administrator is definitely one for the books. This fight was emotional, intense, and filled with all the drama you would expect when you're up against someone with literal cheat codes.
絶空
After losing his best friend, Kirito was not messing around. He was out for blood and determined to put an end to all the unfair nonsense happening in this world. The fight was a showcase of Kirito's sword skills, willpower, and, let's be honest, his ability to make even the craziest situations look cool. Of course, the administrator wasn't an easy opponent, cheaters never are, and both sides pulled out some insane moves. And the animation was top tier too, with choreography that reminded everyone why Sword Art Online fights are so much fun to watch. No disappointments here. We even got a little nostalgia as Kirito whipped out his iconic dual-wielding skills from the earlier arcs. In the end, he manages to take her down with sheer determination and combat prowess. But because the administrator just has to be extra, she tries to make her escape, only to get tackled by her own so-called ally. If you're enjoying these fights, then please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Do make sure you turn on the notifications while you're at it. Thanks! Rimuru vs Hinata Sakaguchi. That time I got reincarnated as a slime Season 3.
準備はできた
Rimuru, everyone's favorite overpowered slime, finally gets his rematch with Hinata Sakaguchi, and it's about time. After a whole season of endless meetings and politicking, fans were more than ready for some actual action, and thankfully the animators did not disappoint. Hinata, a total powerhouse with years of experience under her belt, gave Rimuru a tough time in their first fight. But now, powered up and ready to flex, Rimuru isn't holding back, not to kill her. Of course, he's too nice for that, but to make it crystal clear that he is not playing second fiddle to anyone, what makes this fight stand out is the emotional weight behind it. Neither of them is really the bad guy. They're just stuck on opposing sides with different goals, and it all leads to this epic showdown. The fight ends in a draw, with the two of them finally coming to an understanding. But just as you think that things are wrapping up nicely, Hinata gets hit with a surprise attack from her own shady ex-allies. Talk about bad timing. The animation here is top-notch, with magic and swordplay weaving perfectly into the choreography, and the sound design adds that extra oomph. It's a fight well worth the wait, and let's be real, watching Rimuru show off is always a treat.
予測できてるフェイントはもうフェイントじゃない俺の勝ちだ
Number 9. Kazuma's Party vs. Sylvia. Konosuba, Legend of Crimson.
シルビア楽しかったぜさよならだ狙撃
Kazuma's Party isn't exactly famous for their fighting skills, unless you count blowing stuff up, which, to be fair, they are very good at. So when they go up against Sylvia, the Demon King's general, and a high-ranking chimera, you would think that it would be a total disaster. Sylvia shows up to the Crimson Demon Village to snatch an ancient weapon, but instead she gets thrown into absolute chaos. Crimson demons firing off spells, Kazuma's Party flailing around with swords and magic, and let's be honest, a whole lot of nonsense. It's less of a battle and more of a magical circus. Just when it seems like nothing is working, the fight builds up to the main event, Megumin's explosion magic. As usual, the animators went all out, making the explosions look so damn good that you would think they blew half their budget on it, and it is worth every frickin' penny. Despite always being hilariously outclassed, Kazuma's Party somehow makes it work, proving once again that you don't need skill when you got sheer dumb luck, teamwork, and a mage who can blow up half the battlefield.
俺の名は
8. Garfiel vs. Elsa. ReZero Season 2.
殺すぜエルザ・クランヒルテ
殺してから初めてあなたを愛すわガーフィール・ティンゼル
One of the most savage fights in ReZero, and probably one of the most stunningly animated, has to be Garfiel vs. Elsa. If you're familiar with ReZero, you already know the stakes are always insane, and this battle is no exception. Garfiel, the half-beast powerhouse, goes toe-to-toe with Elsa, the assassin who's basically a walking nightmare for Subaru and anyone with a functioning pulse, really. They're evenly matched in strength and speed, but Elsa's creepy, sadistic cunning gives her a slight edge. Garfiel, though, is no pushover, and he lets his animal instincts take the wheel, fighting her on equal ground. Elsa's whole deal is loving to hurt people, weird flex but okay, and Garfield's inner beast makes him the perfect match for her twisted vibe. The fight is brutal, bloody, and full of fatal blows as they go all out to take each other down. The choreography is intense, with every move drenched in violence. Classic ReZero.
ゾクゾクしちゃう。
7. Ainz vs Shalltear, Overlord.
アインズールゴーンに敗北はない。シャルティア、お前は私の前にひれ伏すのだ。
Overlord does a fantastic job of making MMO fights feel like actual boss battles, and Ainz vs Shalltear is a perfect example. This fight had every Overlord fan absolutely losing it. After Shalltear, the vampire guardian of Nazarick, gets brainwashed by some outside force, she turns on Ainz, and things get real fast. Before jumping into the fighting, Ainz does what any MMO pro would. He stacks up every buff imaginable on himself.
インフィニティウォール、マジックウォードホーリー、ライフエッセンス、グレーターフルポテンシャル。
Probably while muttering, better be safe than sorry. The fight itself is nothing short of epic. Shalltear's unique abilities are practically a hard counter to Ainz's magic, forcing him to take her on seriously. But despite how intense it gets, Ainz clearly values Shalltear and fights strategically instead of just going for a kill shot. What we get is a battle filled with insane combat abilities, next-level tactics, and some absolutely gorgeous animation. It's one of those fights where you're on the edge of your seat, even if you know that Ainz is gonna win because, well, let's face it, the guy is always 10 steps ahead.
オールンダウン。
この恩義こそまさにマサリック最強の恩かと。
Shalltear vs everyone, Recreators.
汝が敵に票をうがてインデュストリウス・ベカード。
Imagine a reverse isekai where fictional characters pop up into the real world, and Shalltear, the most extra villain you've ever seen, shows up with the ability to just literally rewrite reality. She's like that final boss in a game who doesn't just cheat, she is the cheat code. The finale pits her up against the entire cast, and it's got full-on OP boss versus everyone vibes. Magic spells, giant robots, familiars, you name it, and they throw it all at her. And what does Shalltear do? She shrugs it off because she's too bored to care. The animation during this fight is just absolutely stunning, with chaos happening everywhere and emotions cranked all the way up. It's the kind of battle that's as exhausting as it is epic, but even after all the effort, our heroes realize they can't take her down the usual way because, she's literally bending reality. So, what do? They bring in her writer, the one person she actually cares about, to basically talk her down. It's a high-stakes climax that reminds you how powerful stories and their creators really are. Honestly, it's not every day you see a battle end with emotional damage instead of a flashy finishing move. 5. Mao vs Lucifer. The devil is a part-timer.
おめえも悪魔大元帥なら潔く覚悟を決めろ。
The fight between Mao and Lucifer is basically an office drama turned up to 11. One of Mao's old generals, Lucifer, decides to throw a tantrum and betray him by teaming up with a rogue priest. Thinking Mao's gone soft in this new world, Lucifer starts terrorizing the city. But Mao is not having it. He's got a city to protect, and not to mention a part-time job to keep. Losing a paycheck over some workplace squabble? Yeah, not happening. So Mao temporarily regains his demonic powers and goes full-on serious mode. And let's be real, Lucifer never even stood a chance. The guy only had the guts to challenge Mao when he thought that he was powerless. What follows is an insane animation sequence that fans have been raving about for ages. It's moments like this that remind us why we love The Devil is a Part-Timer, where epic battles meet relatable workplace struggles, and the stakes are as high as your rent payment. 4. Berkuli vs. Demon Lord Vecta, Sword Art Online War of Underworld. One of the strongest integrity knights in Sword Art Online Alicization, Berkuli, finally faces off against Demon Lord Vecta in what can only be described as an inevitable boss fight moment. Berkuli, being the absolute time-bending legend that he is, uses his divine object, the time-splitting sword, to predict and counter Vecta's moves like he is playing 4D chess. Meanwhile, Vecta shows up with his dark magic and ridiculous strength, making it pretty clear that he is not here to play fair. What makes this fight so gripping is the sheer intensity. You can feel how much is riding on every clash, and when he lands that decisive final strike, chef's kiss. The animation here is next level, with fluid movements and choreography so smooth that it's almost hypnotic. Watching him take on Vecta was not just thrilling, it was the kind of epic showdown that reminds you of why you love Sword Art Online, even when it's being overly dramatic. 3. Harley Quinn vs. Katana, Suicide Squad Isekai. In Suicide Squad Isekai, we get a rematch between Harley Quinn and Katana, this time in a magical water-filled setting. Harley, being her usual chaotic self, just charges in with her usual trusty bat like she's ready to win on pure vibes alone, only to be immediately disarmed. Enter Clayface, who decides to spice things up a bit by morphing into a literal sword. Yep, apparently that's his thing, and honestly, it's as ridiculous as it is amazing. Somehow, this magical boost lets her keep up with Katana, or so we think, until the twist. Katana was actually Joker in disguise all along, because of course he was. Wit Studio absolutely nailed the animation here, making every hit and chaotic moment feel alive. The fight ends with Katana, aka Joker, retreating after being outnumbered by the squad. It's peak Harley energy from start to finish. Wild, unpredictable, and completely over the top, just the way we like it. 2. Sora and Shiro vs. Izuna, No Game, No Life. The sibling geniuses, Sora and Shiro, go head-to-head with Izuna, one of the toughest gamers they have ever faced. In an intense match of love or loved to, yes, it's a game about love bullets and flashy explosions, but don't let the sparkles fool you. This showdown is as strategic as it gets. The tension keeps building with every single move, and the choreography is so over the top that you cannot help but be glued to the screen. Watching Sora and Shiro systematically outsmart Izuna is a thrill, especially when their big save moment comes from Steph of all people. Plot twist? Even that was part of their plan. Of course it was. In the end, the duo wins, but instead of rubbing it in, they remind Izuna that games are all about having fun. Classic Sora and Shiro, turning even the most intense battle into a life lesson.
今度は正面にしまった
1. Dead End vs. Dragon God Orsted, Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation.
人神という単語に聞き覚えはあるか
あります。たまに夢に出てきて。
We're ending this list with Dead End vs. Dragon God Orsted from Jobless Reincarnation, and spoiler alert, things go very badly for Rudius and his crew. It all kicks off because Rudius just had to say something to the wrong guy, landing Dead End in a fight they definitely didn't sign up for. Orsted, being the unstoppable force of nature that he is, absolutely wrecks the entire party like he's swatting flies. What follows is a fast-paced, brutal action sequence with animation so stunning that you might forget to breathe for a second. In fact, the only thing they managed to do to mildly impress him was when Rudius unleashes one of his strongest spells. And by impress, I mean Orsted probably thought, huh, cute, before continuing to obliterate them. It's the perfect way to wrap up the list because, let's face it, nothing says memorable like watching your favorite characters get steamrolled by an actual dragon god.
My Shin.
And there you have it, the best animated fights in the Isekai. Of course, there are